Hello everyone, nice to meet with all of you once again. Last time we spoke together from the book of John chapter 11, especially the word take away the stone, the word of Jesus really touched my heart. And I really felt like God, He was telling me, hey, take away your stone, take away your thoughts, take away your experience, take away what you're seeing with your eyes. And we could see that the word of Jesus coming inside of our hearts the way it is. Everyone, when you look at chapter 11, and there was full of darkness, and there was sadness, and there was the grievances. And though they invited Jesus, but they did not believe in Jesus. That's why Jesus was telling them, take away the stone. But it is not only the stone of the tomb, but Jesus was speaking to the heart of Mary and Martha and those who were there in that place, taking away their stone, taking away their thoughts, taking away their own heart, so that the word of Jesus can come inside of them and the way it is. In chapter 11, it started with much darkness and grievances and sadness. However, in all the places where Jesus is, sadness never ends with sadness. Difficulties never ends with difficulties. Sufferings will never end with a suffering. Even at the wedding of Canaan, everyone, they were suffering, they were in sadness, and they were in much worries because at the wedding, they did not have wine. But Jesus was at that wedding. Because Jesus was there, and that difficulties and sufferings and the problem did not just end as a problem. It was a place where Jesus, He was able to perform His work. They were able to see the works of God in the wedding of Canaan. Also in chapter 11, it started with much worries, much sadness, much grievances and difficulties in their hearts. However, because Jesus was there, it didn't just end as a problem. It didn't just end as grievances and sadness. It turned into a joy and happiness. Now, as we start John chapter 12, it is talking about how they made a feast together with Jesus. Let us take a look. John chapter 12, verse 1 and 2. Verse 1, then 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, who had been dead, whom He had raised from the dead. And they made Him a supper, and Martha served, but Lazarus was one of those who sat at the table with Him. Here in verse 2 it says, and there they made Him a supper. I don't know how that supper really sounds, but in Korean version, the Bible that I'm reading, it says they made a feast for Him, for Jesus. Everyone, in chapter 12, this whole story started with sadness, grievances, and difficulties because Lazarus was dead. But because Jesus was there, that problem did not just end as a problem. That grievance did not just as a grievance. All that problem, grievances, and difficulties, problem turned into a feast, turned into a supper, turned into a joy, turned into a happy party together with Jesus. Everyone, wherever Jesus is, everyone, it seems like it is a problem. It may look like it is difficulties. It may look like a grievances. However, if there is only Jesus, then all of that problem is going to end with feast and joy and happiness. Do you have any problem in your lives? Do you have any grievances in your life? Everyone, if you have Jesus Christ inside of your heart accurately, then one thing that you know for sure is that it is going to end with supper. It is going to end with a party. It is going to end with a feast inside of your heart. Everyone, what is the problem? Problem is really not a problem. The real problem is not having Jesus in that problem. Oftentimes, though we have Jesus, we forget about that Jesus in our problem. Everyone, when you look at the whole Bible starts with a problem. Everyone, when you look into the book of Genesis chapter 1, Everyone, it started with the darkness. This earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. However, there was the word of God. Let there be light. And there was light. Everyone, it started with the darkness on this earth. This earth was without form, void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. Then God said, let there be light, and there was light. It started with a darkness, but because there was God, it ended with the light. Everyone, the whole story inside the Bible, 66 books of the Bible, it is like that. We quickly want to have a light. We want to start with a light. But in the works of God, in the place where Jesus is able to perform his work, he always starts with the darkness and ends with light. Let us go back to Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1. Let us take a look at verse 8. When you look at Genesis chapter 1 verse 8, it says, and God called the firmament heaven, and so the evening and the morning were the second day. Everyone, how do we count the day? We start with the day, right? We start with the light. And then in the world, we end it with evening, night. And that is called one day, isn't it? But in the Bible, when you look at it, to God, it starts with evening and then it ends with morning. And God called the firmament heaven, and so the evening and the morning were the second day. Now God, in the world of God, he always starts with evening and then ends with morning. Everyone, in the evening, have you ever worried because it is so dark? Oh my God, it is so dark. What's going to happen tomorrow? What if the day doesn't come? What if the next day doesn't come? What if the sun doesn't rise? What if we don't get any light the next day? What's going to happen? We are in a big trouble. Everyone, in the evening, do you worry about tomorrow? There's no one who worries about tomorrow. Why you don't worry about tomorrow? Why aren't you not concerned about the tomorrow? How come you're not worried? What if the light doesn't appear tomorrow? What if sun doesn't rise tomorrow? What's going to happen? You'll be in a big trouble, isn't it? Everyone, can you guarantee that tomorrow the sun will rise? Yes. One thing that you know for sure is that tonight, you know tomorrow the light will come. You know tomorrow the sun will rise. That's why in the evening, at night, you don't worry about the tomorrow at all. Why? You may not know many things, but one thing that you know for sure is that tomorrow, around at 6 a.m., around 6:30 a.m., I don't know what time the sun rises in Kenya exactly, but one thing that you know for sure is that the sun will rise. That's why at night, you don't worry about tomorrow. You don't worry about that darkness. You don't worry about not having light in that evening, that night. Why? Because in the evening you sleep, and then in the morning when you wake up, you know that the sun will rise again. Everyone, those are people who have Jesus in their problems. Now, they don't worry about the problems. They don't worry about difficulties. Why? Because they know one thing for sure. If I am together with Jesus, if I am together with God, tomorrow the sun will rise again. The light will come again. Lazarus is going to leave. This problem, he is going to help me. That difficulties, he is going to help me. For sure, these grievances, God is going to change this into happiness and joy. If you know for sure that that problem and that difficulties is going to turn into light, would you worry about it because of that difficulties and problem? You wouldn't worry about it. Why do you worry about the problem? Because you don't accurately believe and you don't have accurate assurance that that darkness is going to turn into light. Everyone, in the world of God, the day does not start with the light. the day always starts with evening and ends with a light. Let us take a look at another one. Verse 13. So the evening and the morning were the third day. Not only the second day, also the third day. So the evening and the morning were the third day. So the evening and the morning were the fourth day. So the evening and the morning were the fifth day. Everyone, every single day in the Bible, it starts with evening. But you are not worried about the evening. You are not grieved about that evening. Because the one thing that you know for sure, it's going to end with the day and with the light. Everyone, do you have any difficulties? Why are you difficult? You are difficult because you don't have assurance in your heart that the light will come tomorrow. You don't believe that the day will come tomorrow. Everyone, that itself is what is bothering your heart right now. But if you know for sure that tomorrow, if the day is going to come, you're not worried about that evening. You're not worried about that darkness. You're not worried about that problem. You're not worried about that grievances. Everyone, for sure, John chapter 11 started with the darkness, with the grievances, with the sadness. Jesus, Lazarus is sick. Yes, that is for the glory of God. Don't worry about it. Okay, I won't worry about it. But Jesus didn't come and Lazarus is dead. Look, Jesus, why you didn't come quickly? Lazarus is dead now. Now it's useless though you may come. Now what are you going to do though you come? Everyone, in their hearts, in the heart of Mary and Martha and the people in the village, their hearts were filled with the darkness. Their hearts were evening. Why they did not have the day, the light inside of their heart? Because although Jesus is there, they did not believe that Jesus is able to raise Lazarus from the death. However, when you move over to chapter 12, Lazarus has lived and now they threw a supper. They threw a party. They threw a feast for Jesus and Lazarus who is alive. Everyone, they are so joyful and happy. In chapter 11, it started with the darkness and difficulties and grievances. But now it ends with the joy and happiness. In chapter 12, now it starts with the feasts, with the supper, with the joy and happiness, sharing the testimonies together, sharing the word of God together. Everyone, one thing that we gotta know for sure is that though there may be darkness, though there may be problem, as long as we have Jesus inside of us, then for sure this darkness is going to end with the light, end with the day. If we accurately believe in that, then this problem and difficulties cannot be a difficulties and problem in our heart. Let us come back into the book of John chapter 12. John chapter 12, verse 10. It says, but the chief priests plotted to put Lazarus to death also. Now the chief priests, they were making a plot to kill Lazarus once again. It says Lazarus to death also. What does it mean by death also? It means not only Lazarus, they also wanted to kill Jesus and Lazarus to death also. Yes, why did they want to kill Jesus? Everyone, they were jealous about Jesus. Now they began to believe that Jesus is the Son of God. They saw the works of God, and people, they began to open their hearts, and people, they began to believe in Jesus. That's why the priests, they tried to kill Jesus, and they tried to also kill Lazarus as well. Everyone, when you look at verse 10, it seems like the difficulties is coming to their life again. Chief priests, they're making a plot. Now they're pushing them and they're falsely accusing them, try to take away Jesus and Lazarus. They're making all these kind of, fake accusations and the plots to kill them. Everyone, it seems like there is also another problem and the difficulties are coming into their life. However, there are not only the difficulties and the problems, but when you look at verse 13, it says, took branches of palm trees and went out to meet him and cried out, Hosanna, and blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, the King of Israel. Everyone, there were not only the chief priests who were plotting to kill Jesus and Lazarus, but as Jesus was entering into Jerusalem, there were many people who were receiving Jesus as the King of Israel inside of their heart. Everyone, when you look at only verse 10, you can also fall into difficulties and problems. Why are these people trying to kill Jesus? Why are these people trying to kill Lazarus? Why people are persecuting Jesus? Everyone, if you only look at verse 10, it seems like there is only a problem, only a difficulties as we are partaking in the works of the gospel. But if you read along and also look at verse 13, we can see how God is keeping them and protecting them, and many people receiving Jesus as the King of Israel, as the King of their heart. Everyone, what does that mean? Everyone, once again, it starts with problem, it starts with difficulties, but there are not only difficulties, and there are also the works of God, and there are also the protection of God. But oftentimes, as we also serve the gospel and live for the gospel and live our spiritual life, we tend to focus on what? We tend to focus on chapter 12, verse 10, isn't it? When you only look at 10, you cover verse 13, and when you only look at verse 10, now you might have difficulties come arise inside of your heart again. Why are these people plotting to kill us? Why are they once again giving us much difficulties and problems? However, those who have Jesus in our heart, you don't only look at verse 10, you also read down and you have the eyes to see verse 13 as well. It says, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, the King of Israel. Wow! In this place, I thought that there are only chief priests and those people who are persecuting Jesus. But look at these people. They are opening their heart towards Jesus. They are receiving Jesus inside of their heart. They are receiving Jesus as the king of their life and king of their heart. Everyone, as we live for the gospel, as we live the spiritual life, it's not that there are only joy and happiness. Everyone, sometimes there are situations that seems like chapter 11, where Lazarus is sick and Lazarus is dead. Sometimes there are persecutions as well, like chapter 12, verse 10 as well. But if you're the one who believes in Jesus, who is inside of you, you don't only look at chapter 11, you don't only just look at chapter 12 of verse 10, but you have the eyes to see the works of Jesus Christ, which appears in chapter 12, verse 2, and also chapter 12, verse 13, where Jesus, he comes, help us, he protects us, and how he opens the hearts of the many people, and many people receiving Jesus as the King of Israel. Everyone, as we live for the gospel, there are problems. But in the midst of the problem, God, he has made us so that we can look upon Jesus. Everyone, the children of Israel, on the way in the wilderness, they complain about the road, and God has sent the fiery serpent. Everyone, to them, that fiery serpent was a big burden and problems. And they were praying and that God will remove those fiery serpents. But what did God do? God did not remove the fiery serpent. God did not remove the problems. God did not remove the difficulties. However, instead, God has given the bronze serpent upon a pole. Next time, I'll be covering that story in details. But in that story, that the bronze serpent upon a pole is the shadow image of Jesus Christ. Everyone, that the Jesus Christ who is lifted up at the cross. Everyone, if you look upon that the bronze serpent on a pole, then you are healed, you are able to gain life. Everyone, he did not remove the problems. He did not remove the difficulties, but taught them how to look upon Jesus. Everyone, as we live for the gospel, as we serve the gospel, there are persecutions. Sometimes there are problems. Sometimes there are grievances. But God is teaching us how we can look upon that the bronze serpent, how we can look upon that the Jesus, how we can look upon that God who is still together with us, helping us and protecting us. There was a time about 5 years ago, I remember. There was a time that my daughter, she was playing with her elder brother, and her elder brother, ran away using the toilet. That time I was living in the house where there was a toilet in the center, and there was a master bedroom, and there was the children bedroom in the center. That was the toilet. And my son, he went to the room passing through the toilet. And so my daughter wanted to catch the elder brother, and she also ran and to catch up with the elder brother. But as she entered through the toilet, all of a sudden on the toilet tile, and there was water, there was some soap, it was slippery. And as she was passing by, she slipped by that tile and she fell backward like this. And then, you see this corner is sharp, right? But there was a tile, and there was also a tile here. And in the corner, it was a very sharp corner with a tile. And she fell down, she completely fell down, and she hit her bag in that corner. And because it hurt so much, she's supposed to cry, but she was also very surprised that she couldn't also cry as well. So I heard that noise of her falling down, so I quickly went to the toilet, and she had already fallen down, and she was only blinking her eyes. So I quickly picked her up, and I saw the back of her head, and the blood began to splash like a fountain, or like a water, springing out from the fountain. I was so surprised because I have never seen the blood spraying out. So I quickly brought the toilet paper and put the pressure on the wound. And then I called the hospital and went to the emergency room. As I was, going onto the hospital in the emergency room, inside the car, I was pressing and holding on her wound. And then in my heart, I was thinking, God, why did you allow this situation? What have I done wrong that you have allowed this kind of situation in my life? God, I don't know what I have done wrong that you have allowed this, but whatever I have done wrong, I'm sorry. Please give me a chance. Please save my daughter. Please help my daughter. And then we quickly went to the emergency room, and then by chance, and there was a very good doctor, and then she had about 5-6 stitches on her head, and now until today she's very fat and healthy, and also running around all of our church compound playing with the friends as well. Everyone, as I was coming back, I was thinking, on the way to hospital, I prayed, God, why have you allowed this kind of situation in my life? What have I done wrong? Everyone, whenever you face such kind of situation, you always look back to yourself and then you imagine, what have I done wrong, isn't it? Everyone, on the way back, after the treatment, I was thinking, if God was to give me this kind of punishment because I have done something wrong, then I felt like that my nose is gone already. Hey, why do you listen to the worldly things? And then he cuts off my ear, then my ears are gone. Hey, why do you look at the worldly things? And then he removes my eyes. and he chops off my arms. Why did you make that mistake? And then he cuts off my, amputates my legs. Every time when I did something wrong, if God was to punish me or give me those kind of punishments, I felt like, I wouldn't be alive by now. Everything was already chopped off and I'm already dead. As I was coming back, one thing that I realized was that, it is not the reason why God has allowed this kind of incident in my life. Not because I have done something wrong. If he was to give me problems and difficulties every time I make mistake or do something wrong, then I wouldn't even exist. I'll be gone completely. It is not that he was giving me a punishment because I have done something wrong, but God, he wanted me to look upon that the bronze serpent upon a pole. He wanted me to rely on Jesus. He wanted me to realize that I have that Jesus who changed the darkness into light, who changed problem into light, who changes the difficulties into light, who changes the sadness into light. Everyone, for sure in the book of John, it started with a problem. It started with the sadness. It started with difficulties. It started with the tears. But now, in John chapter 12, they were having a feast with Jesus. After having the feasts, now there was also another problem come upon them. Now the chief priests, they came to them and tried to kill Jesus and tried to kill Lazarus as well. So when you only look at verse 10, then you might think, what? Another problem? Another difficulties? Another sadness? God, I am living for the gospel. I am serving the gospel. Why do you allow such kind of situation in my life? But it's not always that there is only the difficulties. There are difficulties, but there are also the works of Jesus Christ. Everyone, I hope you turn your eyes from verse 10 so that you can also look at verse 13. Yes, there are problems, but now as Jesus enters into Jerusalem, now we can see how people, they are coming to Jesus and coming with the branches of palm trees and receiving Jesus as the King of Israel. Wow, these people are receiving Jesus as the King of Israel. Wow, they are receiving Jesus as the Lord. Everyone, when you see people receiving salvation, when you see people receiving Jesus inside of their heart, you gain another joy and peace, happiness and thankfulness inside of your heart. Everyone, as we live for the gospel, everyone, though we may have received salvation, everyone, though we have God and Jesus in our heart, but at times there are difficulties and problems come arise. But if you have Jesus, then that Jesus is going to turn evening into day, the darkness into light, difficulties into a feast, sadness into a supper, problem into a big feast. Everyone, as long as you have Jesus, everyone believes that Jesus is going to turn this problem into a light. Turn this problem, turn this sadness, turn these tears into a supper. Everyone, sometimes there are persecutions. Yes, sometimes there are difficulties like verse 10. But if you have Jesus, then that Jesus is going to turn everything into verse 13, where you can see the works of God once again. Everyone, we are together with such Jesus. Even today, we are together with that Jesus in our life. And as you believe that Jesus is with you, I hope you can rest and have peace in your heart. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you next time.